buddy, what is going on? What is going on? Thank you very much for being here. John and I kind of, splitting shifts this week. We're both taking a little bit of time off, so trying to make sure, obviously, one of us is here. So hopefully everybody's enjoying their time this summer, enjoying the World Cup. France and Morocco, that game just finished. Mbappe, another goal. France wins 2-0, so they are going to be in the Final Four, and we're obviously following that game. Of course, we've been telling you guys about it. Coverage all week, all World Cup coverage has been on AM 760, so glad to have be carrying those games. And now we'll start our show a few minutes behind of our regular schedule, but we got a great show lined up. Appreciate everybody being here. And I'll give everyone just a couple things here. Darren Smith's coming up at 4:30. Darren Smith will join the show at 4:30, and look forward to talking a little World Cup with him. Of course, we'll slip in a couple of Padres baseball questions as well. Annie Heilbrunn of the UT will join us at 5 o'clock, and we'll be packed with a bunch of other topics as well. So let me just start off the show with this. It's funny, a couple days ago. So I didn't do the show yesterday. Schaefer did it. I'm doing, obviously, the show today. So last show I did was on Tuesday. And I come in, we do the show, and I'm sitting there, and Brent and I are having a conversation. And I'm asking Brent, and we're going through some of the different scenarios, and I'm having a very, very difficult time to say anything positive about the Padres. Nothing I could do. I mean, as much as I try, I'm just being realistic and honest, and there just really isn't that much positive to talk about the Padres. This is coming off that 8-0 loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Just an embarrassing loss for San Diego against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Brent, I think I asked you something. I was like, hey, do they get out of this? What's your level of confidence? I forget what the question was. And you said something to the effect of, well, I'm not going to count them out because I've watched them long enough, and they always kind of seem to find a way to get back into the mix. Now, I'm not telling you winning 2 games in a row against Arizona is getting back into the mix, but does that sound about right, Brent? Is that about accurate of our conversation?
Yep, it's on par for them.
It's funny because we'll go from, and I'm not going to, I won't sit here all day and just talk about the previous games. And we got some big picture stuff to talk about. I thought there were some really interesting articles about the Padres and Mason Miller and a couple executives that were weighing in on that. But let me just say this about these last couple of games. The 4-1 win against Arizona in game 2 of that 4-game set. They'll finish their 4-game set tonight. They'll finish that a little bit later today, I think 6:40, so another evening game. And, again, like always, we're saying it all the time, and people probably get sick of it. It's a critical game, and all of these are very, very important. Yes, we've heard that conversation before. But I will say this. I will say the 4-1 win on Tuesday night, followed by last night's win against the Arizona Diamondbacks 10-4. 2 really good back-to-back wins. And it's tough because I think if you're a Padre fan, you don't really care how you're getting the wins at this point. But at least they were just 2 well-played games. And there were a lot of different guys that contributed. And, whether it was Marquez on Tuesday night just pitching phenomenal, or Michael King yesterday, who is Michael King. I mean, anytime, for me, the bigger question with Michael King is when he doesn't have, the bigger surprise is when he doesn't pitch well. So those were just 2 solid games for the Padres, 2 good back-to-back wins. You give a little bit of momentum. You get yourself back to 500. Still 4 games left before we get to the All-Star break, and we'll see how the Padres can finish this off. But I thought last night, if I'm just looking back at last night's game, I thought a couple things were unique to me. I was reading Kevin Acey's article this morning. He does obviously a phenomenal job for the UT. And, I'm looking at some of these stats here, and they're staggering. It's in one sense, it's really disappointing because I'll read you some of the stats. You'll know what I'm talking about. But let me give it to you. They scored double digits yesterday by putting up 10 runs against Arizona. That was the first time they've done that in 57 games. What's crazy, I just kind of thinking off the top of my head, I'm like, wait a minute, didn't we just give up? There was a 23-run game, a 15-run game. I mean, the Padres are giving up double-digit runs that part is certainly we've seen that against them, but their offense actually putting up 10 runs plus. He said in his article as well, the second time in 46 games that they've scored more than 7 runs. 13 total hits yesterday. I thought stylistically it was fun watching San Diego play. And what I'm talking about from that perspective is a little bit more small ball, a little bit more manufacturing runs, certainly some clutch hits for the Padres yesterday. Everyone got going, especially if you get 13 hits. Of course, you have everybody contributing. And even some of these other names, just to see Jake Cronenworth, since he's been back, he's been really, really good for the Padres. Luis Campusano, who was balling for San Diego before he started dealing with some of his injuries and things along those lines. So to see Luis Campusano back out there, they have just had, it just seems like it's been so long since they've had any production from the catcher position. And it's just kind of been the reality of San Diego, been the reality of the Padres. But to see all these guys contributing yesterday. The one thing I will say, too, about the small ball, whether people like it or they don't, I do think that that's something that is going to be important for them. You got to play to your strengths. You got to play to your advantages. And these last couple of years, I feel like there was a lot of criticism that went towards Mike Schilt when they would play small ball. And I think there was definitely times where you would see that at least this season where it felt like, yeah, they're not trying to take advantage of it or trying to just manufacture runs. They just got no margin for error. So anytime I see this Padres team play a little bit more small ball, try to manufacture runs, do the little things, I do think that gives the Padres a lot better chances to win games because we know that's where they've been struggling. Okay, a couple things I want to do when we come back. There are a couple of things that came from last night. I want to play a little bit of sound from Craig Stammen from last night. He talked a little bit about the Padres offense. We have got so used to playing Craig Stammen when things are not going well. I want to hear what it's like when things do go well, when he has a night to take a breather and say, Jesus, finally a complete game from everybody. We'll play a little Craig Stammen when we come back. And then I thought there was something interesting. Trade deadline articles everywhere. And to be honest with you, articles that aren't even putting the Padres in it because they're not expecting them to be in it. We'll do that when we come back. Appreciate you guys being here. Schaefer and Sliwa Show on San Diego Sports 760. What's up, y'all? All right. So John and him and I both had some vacation this week. So we're like shifting here. He's doing a day, I'm doing a day. He's doing a day, I'm doing a day. So that's why we haven't been doing the show together. We wanted to fill in the week and at least get one of us here. So all right, what do we got here? Padres been playing so bad that you need a day off from talking about the Padres every day. Respect that. Yeah, it's a frustrating team. Not going to lie about that. Definitely a frustrating team. Signs of life against other crap teams. You could be right about that. I don't think I'm questioning that right there. Hope they sell. No reason to keep Mason Miller or some other tradable pieces. This team gets worse as years roll on. There are a couple articles that were fascinating to me that kind of hit on that about the one article ESPN put out there didn't even put the Padres on this conversation of playoffs. So we'll get into that. And then there's some executives that said some stuff about Mason Miller, kind of, I think, asked the question of whether they actually would or they wouldn't. So appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for hanging out. Put any questions, comments, whatever you guys want. I'll try to read these on there too. Okay. Thank you guys.
This report is sponsored by Anderson Plumbing, Heating, and Air. The Padres and Diamondbacks are getting set for Game 4 of their series tonight down at Petco Park. It's going to be Merrill Kelly going for Arizona and Griffin Canning going for the Padres. First pitch tonight is at 6:40. In NBA news, the Clippers-Raptors trade centered around Kawhi Leonard will not be completed until the NBA's investigation into whether or not the Clippers circumvented the salary cap is completed. The Clippers said in a statement today that the trade can be finalized if the Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result in the ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, the Raptors, they issued their own statement saying that we'll wait for the league's findings rather than assuming that risk. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens with that. World Cup, we got one final from earlier today. France defeated Morocco 2-0. Choosing the right home service company isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about trusting who's in your home. That's why homeowners count on Anderson for friendly professional service that keeps everything running right. Visit AndersonPHA.com.
All right, starting Monday, San Diego Sports 760 has 9 chances to win $1,000 every weekday with a bonus bucks giveaway. That's every hour through 5 p.m., 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., starting Monday, July 13th. Listen for the keyword, then enter it at sportssd.com, starting Monday at 9 a.m. Oh, my gosh, Brent, I was just listening to your update right there, and I was going to talk about the Kawhi stuff a little bit later, which I will. That's fine. But I did not hear that piece, or at least I didn't read that piece, about the Clippers basically saying, hey, it's cool. You guys can do the deal. But if anything goes down, you guys will actually be the ones penalized. How do you even have that in a quote? Like, how is that part of a statement? How idiotic is that from the Clippers to be like, it's no problem, man. You guys, it's completely okay on our end. Just a heads up, if we lose some draft compensation, you actually end up losing the draft compensation. I can't believe that quote is there.
That's why I thought the funniest thing was the Raptors, statement to follow that was just like pretty much essentially was just, no, we're cool. We'll wait.
Thank you, but no, thank you. Man, that's interesting. I will say this, and Kawhi Leonard obviously was just a big piece of the San Diego State program. And, I got love for Kawhi Leonard for that. I got love for Kawhi Leonard. I thought there was a point in his career where he was, obviously one of the top players, wins a couple of championships, then wins one in Toronto. And he had a really interesting moment in his career where he was going to choose a path between, do I want to go to the Lakers or do I want to go to the Clippers? He chose the Clippers, and it is what it is. If that's where he wanted to be and he didn't want to be maybe under the shadow of LeBron and Kawhi or Anthony Davis, fine, all good. He's entitled to make that decision. But damn, I mean, you want to talk about what could have been. I don't think it's hit on enough of what could have been if Kawhi Leonard did end up joining the Lakers. That would have been a pretty unstoppable team. And I know injuries and there's other things that have come into play, but I just heard that quote there about the Clippers and basically saying like, hey, just let us know. It's like, yeah, I'm good on that. I appreciate that. All right, we'll get into some of that stuff a little bit later in the show because I think the Kawhi piece and there's a couple of other things around LeBron that I want to get into a little bit later in the show. So I saw this, and let me just kind of point out a couple things here real quick because we won't talk probably about Michael King until Michael King starts again. Last night going 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run. The start he had against the Dodgers where Padres ended up losing that game, and I don't want to give you any of the details of it because that game is still one of the most frustrating Padre games, and trust me, there's a long list this year. Goes 6 innings, gives up those 2 earned runs. He had one start against the Dodgers that wasn't that good. The start before that against the Atlanta Braves, 7 innings, 0 earned runs. He's definitely had an up and down season, but I'll continue to say this. I think Michael King I think he loves the big moments. I think he's a playoff pitcher. I would have a lot of confidence in Michael King if he's on the mound in a playoff game, but you got to get there first. I'm as big of a fan of Michael King as you can possibly have. I saw this too in the UT. Kevin Acee put this out. Quality starts for the Padres this year. Michael King has 9. Randy Vasquez has 4. Walker Buehler has 3, but he has more than double than any other pitcher. Of course, part of that has to do with Nick Pavetta's not here. He has been up and down this year. That's the only kind of issue with him. He went through this stretch here early in the season where his ERA was around a 2.3. Then he goes through a stretch where his ERA is 6.4. And the good news is, in his last handful of starts from June 22nd to July 8th, you're getting the Michael King that this is who he is. Michael King is 2.7 ERA. He's been 1.03 whip. He's been a lot better over this handful of starts here. And I think we're hopefully going to get the version of Michael King. And frankly, there's certain things that you just can't negotiate with. And I think for the Padres, they're a perfect example. They can't negotiate with Michael King being average. They can't negotiate with Michael King being They can't negotiate with Michael King not being great. They got no margin for. I don't have to tell you guys about the starters. I don't have to tell. Griffin Canning will take the mound a little bit later today. I'm sure people will be on pins and needles. And if he gave them 5 innings and 2 runs, you would take that in a heartbeat. But if he gave them 3 innings and gave up 6 runs, I'd be like, yeah, I've seen, it's not going to be shocked or surprised. I've seen enough of these Padres pitchers. So I just wanted to point that out because we won't talk about Michael King again until we get a little bit further down. So I want to give everyone, there were a couple of things that I saw today that I thought were really interesting on the Padres. And I know, Brent, you had mentioned me before the show. I think you and John were doing some playoff odds. And I think you mentioned ESPN had its own playoff odds, and we'll worry about that a little bit later. Fangraphs has it at a number. I see a couple of people here on YouTube putting it up as well as far as what some of these numbers look like. But I saw something today that it kind of slapped me across the face. ESPN had an article, all right? It had the 2026. If you're on YouTube, I will also try to share this with you here so you can see it. If I can, I can. If I can't, I can't. All good. But I saw this, that 2026 MLB trade deadline, Jeff Passan's top moves for contenders. So I'm like, all right, let's see. Maybe there's an angle here for the radio show. I wonder what they're going to talk about. I wonder what they're going to mention. I've done this enough where, I've seen some of this stuff for Jeff Passan. I've seen some of this stuff that's been on there. And maybe it's Scooble that they're talking about earlier. You guys know that over this last month, they've been doing all these articles about the trade deadline. So again, let me just read the article, or let me read the headline here. 2026 MLB trade deadline, Passan's top moves for contenders. So I start scrolling down, and I get all the way to the National League. And okay, I see the Dodgers, the Brewers. Okay, the Braves are there. Cubbies are there. All teams that you would think there's talking about contenders. Phillies are there. Keep going. Miami's there. It's saying what Miami should do. What should be their priorities here at the trade deadline. I keep going here. St. Louis, 5 games over 500. Pittsburgh's on here, 47-46, 4th place, NL Central, 3 games back of the final wild card spot. I keep scrolling down, and the article ends. I pause here for a second. I'm like, that's it? How many teams they put here in the NL as far as contenders? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the National League. That's all they put. The San Diego Padres weren't even on their list of, hey, let's talk some trade ideas. The president of baseball operations that everybody talks about is wheeling and dealing all the time. Will trade anybody at any time. Doesn't matter the farm system, this. What are the F them picks? That's the proper term of it. Padres aren't even in this article. The Pittsburgh Pirates are in this article, and the San Diego Padres are not. And we're starting the show today, and Brent and I are talking. And Brent, I didn't even bring this up to you, but you went into it, and you're like, hey, did you see this article? It was on ESPN about, it's like trade deadline, whatever the case is. I'm like, the one that they didn't even mention the Padres? He's like, yes. They didn't even mention the Padres. I think a lot of people are obviously looking at, and listen, this is up to San Diego to change. This isn't like a slap in the face to the Padres. This isn't one of those where people are walking around, I can't believe it. I mean, how is that possible? The disrespect from ESPN, no, that has nothing to do with it. It's just a lot of people aren't that confident in the Padres, especially just the way that they've been playing. So I thought that was fascinating. Again, like it kind of slapped me across the face. It's not something that I was expecting. I just assumed that, especially this team and the question marks and everything else, I just assumed that it was going to be part of the conversation, and it was not. So that trade deadline article had absolutely nothing nothing in there about the Padres. And I kind of, in a sense, I guess you could say I understand where they're coming from. Here's what was in there. And I think, to me, and if you look at, the thumbnail here of today's show on YouTube, and this is going to be kind of one of the underlying themes, and it's not the first time it's come up, so I'm not sitting here trying to say that I know this is, maybe even for some people out there, it's a little bit more of an exhausting story. Maybe people are going to say, can we please stop talking about Mason Miller and should the Padres trade him? The problem is we can't, because as long as we're at the point of where the Padres are, as long as they're hovering around 500, as long as they haven't really made a decision yet of whether they're going to try to buy some pieces at the trade deadline or sell some pieces at the trade deadline, Mason Miller's naturally going to come up. And he's going to come up because he's a controlled asset. He's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. He's the best closer in baseball. He can be the difference of winning a World Series or not. But in order for Mason Miller to have the most value that he has, he's got to be on the mound when games are close. And obviously in the postseason, these games become a lot closer. They're 3-2 games. They're 4-3 games. They're 2-1 games, 2-0 games. It's the playoffs. Playoffs are always going to be tight. I thought there were some really, really interesting quotes about Mason Miller. And I'm going to read you guys the title of this, and we'll take our time in getting through it. But again, the conversation is coming up of, should the San Diego Padres keep Mason Miller or should they not? MLB executives discuss whether Padres will trade Mason Miller before the deadline. So I'm going to read some of this for you guys here. MLB.com's Mark Feinsand is the one that wrote the article. And let me just give, this is several anonymous MLB executives discussed the possibility with MLB.com's Mark Feinsand. As far as AJ goes, the only thing I know is I don't know, an American League executive told Feinsand. All right, let's put this in here because I think this will tell a lot. Some of this, by the way, not as updated in the sense of the Padres winning and Padres putting themselves in the position where they took their last 2 games against Arizona Diamondbacks. When we come back, I want to read a couple of these quotes. I want to have the conversation about Mason Miller. Is he untouchable? I mean, it's just simple as that. I mean, for the Padres, anyone can call in and make an offer. But is he untouchable, or should the San Diego Padres listen to anything around Mason Miller just based on all the needs that they have and based on how teams might overpay for a player like Mason Miller if they're in a playoff race? We'll do all that coming up next. Appreciate you guys being here live on the iHeartRadio app. This is the Schaefer and Sleva Show on 760. All right, our iHeartRadio Music Festival is back. Live performances by the Goo Goo Dolls, Kenny Chesney, Lainey Wilson, Snoop Dogg, Weezer, and more. September 18th and 19th at T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas. 2 nights, 1 stage. Now's your chance to buy tickets at AXS.com. Get them now before they sell out. We were talking a little bit about Mason Miller, and I want to read, there was an article out there, and there are some executives that are trying to predict here, hey, what are the Padres going to do? Are they going to keep Mason Miller? Are they not going to keep Mason Miller? I'll read what one executive said. There's a couple of different quotes here. One's an AL executive, another was an NL. Let me just kind of read a few of these here, and then we could have that conversation about Mason Miller. Here's one of the quotes. As far as AJ goes, the only thing I know is I don't know, an American League executive told Mark Feinstein. Here's another one. They have to consider it if they keep playing like this, the executive said. They won't get DeVries-type value back for him, but they'll still do well if they trade him. Obviously talking about Leo DeVries and the Padres trading their number one prospect, what was he, top 3 overall last year to get Mason Miller. All right, here's one more, an NL executive that I'm going to read a quote from. I think they would really have to slide in order to move him. I'm not sure they'd be able to recoup the prospect level they acquired for him last deadline, since there are a few teams that are as aggressive as Preller at the deadline. Basically saying not that as many executives are aggressive as AJ Preller. I don't think he will unless they really fall out of it. It feels like he's going to do everything he can to stay in it as opposed to trying to reset. So I got one other thing here. 2 executives speculate that Miller could fetch a pair of top 100 prospects. One wasn't sure the Padres would feel tantalized enough by that return to pounce, and the other said he could definitely see Preller considering the pivot despite not hearing anything about San Diego making him available. So here's what I take from all these quotes. No one has any freaking idea what AJ Preller is going to do. And to be honest with you, I don't think AJ Preller knows yet. I think every single day that we sit here, we're trying to figure out, and I've said this before, and I got no problem saying it, I don't think a 2-game winning streak is going to change my opinion on this, especially because it's the Arizona Diamondbacks who are just as bad and disappointing as the San Diego Padres. Both of these teams are just hovering right around 500. Padres are sitting at 46 and 46. What I've seen so far from San Diego, I don't see a playoff team. And I don't think that's breaking news, but I just don't see a team that tells me it's screaming, hey, invest more, invest more, invest more. That's my biggest issue right now with the Padres. The Padres have not given you an indication that they can play consistently, that their pitching is reliable, that their stars are going to give you what their contracts are paying them. And that's been my biggest issue with the Padres is I think every single day they've just given you more and more indications that I think when the dust settles, they're probably not a postseason team. And that's just kind of the reality of the Padres situation. Can it change? Of course it can. But my confidence level isn't high that it will. So when I read these quotes here about Mason Miller, and I read one AL executive saying, I got no idea. I got another NL. Well, you know what? If they keep tanking like they are, they should consider it. They gave up one of the top prospects in all of baseball to get Mason Miller. Did you really do that so you can go to the playoffs against the Cubs, be out in 3 games in a wild card matchup in Chicago? Part of that because the Padres all of a sudden couldn't win games on a consistent basis in September after all those trades, and it hurt their chances because they didn't play those games at Petco. And then next trade deadline, you trade him? Does that sound like a good idea? Even if the San Diego Padres don't make the playoffs this year, and they're not going to be in the hunt, and Mason Miller is not being used the way you thought you would use him, don't you want to kind of just retool in the summer and come back and try to do it all over again next year? It just is difficult for me to think that AJ Preller, who's as aggressive as he is, who went out there and gave up literally the farm to go get Mason Miller, that decides after one playoff run with Mason Miller, out in 3 games, losing that series 2-1, and then however this year ends up, you get back to the deadline, and 1 year later, you're trading him for a couple hundred top 100 prospects. Yeah, I just have a difficult time thinking that that's going to happen. And, you know, one of the questions that I'll definitely be more than happy to ask this question to Padre fans that are out there. It doesn't mean that Mason Miller's untouchable. It doesn't mean that the Padres shouldn't take calls if somebody picks up the phone and says, listen, We think we're a Mason Miller away from a deep playoff run, and we think that's the missing piece of winning a World Series. Here's what we have that we can offer. I think they should they should listen. I think they should listen on any offer. I think they should listen on any team that wants the best closer in baseball, and it ain't even close. One of the most reliable pitchers that you can have, some of the most filthy stuff in the game is Mason Miller. And we've seen it. Unfortunately, since the Padres started losing a ton of games, the biggest issue with that is we haven't seen it consistently enough because they're just not winning games. So that part has obviously been a big time issue right there. But it'd be interesting to see how things play out. But I honestly, I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if they traded Mason Miller. And I think you could say both things. I don't think he's an untouchable, and I think I'd be shocked if he got traded. The only way I would want to see that the Padres decided, hey, you know what, they punted on the season, which I think most indications say that that's not how AJ Preller is going to approach this. They're 4.5 games behind a wild card. By the way, winning 2 games in a row, they didn't gain any ground. This is the risk that you have when you go through the losing 9 of 10 games. Even when you start winning games, you got so many teams that you have to jump over. You have so many teams in front of you that you could start winning some games and not actually gain any ground in the standings. But I just have like I said, I would be, it doesn't mean they shouldn't take calls. It doesn't mean that there isn't, if you told me one day that AJ Preller traded Mason Miller before this trade deadline and they came back and everybody's like, look, they got a haul. I mean, unbelievable haul that they got. This just made sense. They had to do it. Sometimes there are teams that make trades and they had no intention of making a trade or changing a player, but they're like, we had no choice. We didn't know we were going to get this kind of a haul. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't see it happening. And all these executives out there that are giving their opinion on it, I don't think there was anything that was there was no clarity. Let's put it that way from reading all these quotes from some of these other people out there. So the Mason Miller conversation continues. It ain't going anywhere, and that's just the part of getting closer to the trade deadline. I think that's what happens. That's a situation that typically happens. All right, let's get to the wrap when we come back. Plus, I know this was mentioned, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this as well. I want to talk about that Kawhi Leonard trade on hold. Brian Windhorst and Shams had some interesting stuff on LeBron James that I want to get into as well. Darren Smith is coming up at 4:30, so we'll have a good conversation with him. We got a lot of stuff to cover. Appreciate you guys being here. We're live on the iHeartRadio app. This is San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by Anderson Plumbing, Heating, and Air. The Padres and Diamondbacks are getting set for Game 4 of their series tonight down at Petco Park. It's going to be Merrill Kelly going against Griffin Canning. First pitch is set for 6:40. In NBA news, the Clippers-Raptors trade centered around Kawhi Leonard will not be completed until the NBA's investigation into whether or not the Clippers circumvented the salary cap is completed. The Clippers issued a statement today that said the trade can only be finalized if the Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. The Raptors, meanwhile, issued their own statement saying that they would wait for the league's findings rather than assuming that risk. Probably smart. In World Cup news, we got one final from earlier. France defeated Morocco 2-0. Choosing the right home service company isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about trusting who's in your home. That's why homeowners count on Anderson for friendly professional service that keeps everything running right. Visit AndersonPHA.com.
It's Schaefer and Sliwa. John Schaefer and San Diego's own Alan Sliwa. Here's Schaefer and Sliwa.
All right, hour number 1 in the books. John Schaefer out today. I'll be holding it down. Appreciate you guys being here. We got still a number of things that we're going to be getting into in today's show. Every time I hear Brent, now 2 updates in a row, talk about that Kawhi Leonard stuff. That's it's just comical to me, that Clippers statement. We'll get into that at 4:50. There's some 4:15. There's some stuff about LeBron I want to hit on as well. Where's he's going to end up? Steph Curry had something to say about him, the chance or the opportunity to play with LeBron. So we'll do all that coming up at 4:15. But it's now time for the wrap.
It's time for the wrap. Presented by Sombrero Mexican Food. Check out their website at sombreromex.com.
Can the Padres close out this 20-game span? They're in 10-10. They're currently 7-9.
All right, 10-10. So you got 4 games left. For those that don't know what we're referring to there, remember we said, Brent, we're talking about this just like crazy stretch that they were going to go into. They had Atlanta, then the Dodgers, then in Chicago, and then, back to L.A. for 4 games, and now they're in the middle of this 4-game set against the Arizona Diamondbacks. I want to say it's Toronto after this, and then the All-Star break. So up until this point, they're 7-9, 4 games to go. They'd have to go 3-3 to get to 10-10. I am going to say no, they don't go 3-1. It's tough. It's tough to give the Padres the benefit of the doubt based on what we've seen so far this year. But I will tell you this. I remember saying this to John as well. I remember him and I had a conversation. I'm like, I would take 9-11 over this stretch. So technically, instead of going 3-1, go 2-2. You do go into the All-Star break at 500. What do you think, Brent? If they came out of this, stretch where they're playing a lot of playoff teams, potential playoff teams, they went 9-11, you taking that, or am I really just lowering the bar for the Padres?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think they'll finish 10-10 just because it would be their MO to, like I've been saying, you can't really put your finger on what they're doing because whenever you think that they're done, they'll, win like 7 out of 8. Whenever, you think they're back, then they'll lose 7 out of 8. So right now, they're on par for the course to go finish 10-10 in that stretch and just give us enough hope to keep us sitting on the fence.
Well, listen, man, if they go 10-10, that means they got to go 3-1 in their next 4 games. There's not a Padre fan that wouldn't take that. I mean, if they could take care of business against Arizona tonight and then go 2-3 or 2-1 over Toronto, that gets to that number. I'm not as confident as you that happens because I think they're a 500 team, which tells me they'll go 2-2 in their final 4. What else you got?
Will you still watch the World Cup with the U.S. out?
Everybody's kind of a little bit different in this. To be honest with you, the USA was not my biggest allure of the World Cup. And I say that because I think I already knew that the United States was not going to be a country that was going to probably get past the round of 16. And if they did, it'd be a little bit surprising, and then that would kind of add a whole new element of excitement and everything else. But the reality is, I was watching the World Cup whether the United States was making it to the round of 16, eliminated from group stage. It kind of didn't matter to me. The best teams in the best teams in the world, the best countries in the world, they're not from the United States. I mean, obviously, We saw France win earlier today. I want to see stars, and the stars are not on USA's national team. It's Mbappe, it's Messi. I mean, go down the list of some of these other teams. I've enjoyed the World Cup. I'm still enjoying the World Cup. I was going to enjoy it based. The United States' success or lack of success was not going to have anything to do of whether I would keep watching the World Cup. But I think if the USA kept winning, it would amplify my interest. But obviously, we know they were out in the round of 16. So, yes, to answer that question, I'm still watching. I watched the game today. Obviously, it was on 760. Tomorrow, there's a game as well, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm all in on the World Cup.
Do you think this has been the best World Cup in recent history?
You know, it's kind of funny. I think it's a fair question. I think there's something to that. Is it just me? And I kind of want to wait for some of these numbers, but I saw a couple things today. Darren's going to be joining the show at 4:30, and he actually replied to a tweet here, and I'll talk to him about it. There is somebody, Henry Bushnell, put this out on Twitter. He says, we have a new most watched soccer game in U.S. history. Mexico versus England. Now, there are also some bonker numbers that went into play for the USA game against Belgium as well. I think there is. For me, I kind of feel like there's a buzz around the World Cup, and I don't think this was just because the United States was in it and the games. You know, most of the games are here in the U.S. I don't know. I think something just kind of caught. Maybe it's part of it is social media. Maybe it's because you got these absolute stars in Mbappe and Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, and all of them are still in it. I'm not sure what hit, but it feels bigger to me this year than I think in previous years.
Do you think the Kawhi Leonard trade will be rescinded?
Kawhi Leonard trade rescinded. I don't. And if, you know, those didn't hear some of the news here, the Kawhi Leonard trade is on hold until this, you know, this stuff with aspiration gets figured out, this investigation. Did the Clippers circumvent? I think, Brent, and I want your opinion on this as well. I think that it would just be, it'd be the worst look for the NBA that, A, there's a player that actually circumvented or there's a team that circumvented the salary cap. That's one on its own. Like, that's a conversation in its own. But then they also traded Kawhi Leonard, so now that trade's got to come back. Everyone would look so stupid and so bad. I think they will do everything in their power to avoid this and make sure that trade goes through, and probably just look the other way and hope that this gets swept under the rug. What do you think? You agree, or do you think there's some real concern here for them?
I think there's concern. I think if there wasn't a possibility of it not going through, they wouldn't have bothered to put a hold on it. If, you know, they looked at it and everything was looking like, you know, the investigation's going to come up with, you know, jack squat, then I think that they would have just let it slide and then just let the trade go through and go, oh yeah, we found nothing in our investigation. The fact that now that they're, you know, was it 8-9 days after the trade, you know, allegedly went down, now they're like, oh, hold on, Kawhi, don't buy that house in Toronto quite yet. Makes me kind of lean like something's going to happen, and that's why they put a halt on it, and instead of just letting it go.
That's interesting. That's actually kind of fascinating. I didn't really look at it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. It's like, hey, something could be going down here. So because something could be going down, we need everyone to pump the brakes. But I don't know. Is there a piece of that, you know, when Toronto and the Clippers are negotiating, the NBA isn't saying like, hey, hold up here. Don't make any trades right now. But free agency started and franchises are trying to move on. Can you imagine? It's like Brandon Ingram now has to go back to Toronto, and whatever you did, I mean, free agency has been going on now for about 10 days. You gotta unwind all of that. But I get your point. I mean, that is something that makes sense. Let me read some of this here so people kind of have an understanding of what's going on. So Shams put out this tweet, Shams Charania of ESPN, that Los Angeles Clippers Toronto Raptors trade centered on Kawhi Leonard will not be complete until the NBA investigation of the Clippers is over. It's so weird. Before even like the season started, a lot of people thought there would be some clarity on this, and still there hasn't. For the past 10 months, our organization has fully cooperated with an NBA investigation, participating in dozens of interviews, providing tens of thousands of documents, and facilitating access to our staff. While the process has been challenging, we have remained committed to transparency. So that's the Clippers obviously talking about that. I'm gonna leave that one alone. There was one other tweet here that came from Shams. Raptors, the NBA league office informed us that result of the ongoing investigation involving the Clippers, we would assume the risk of any potential outcome in the investigation. By the way, that's so stupid. Why would the Clippers have to? Why do the Raptors? What do they have to do? They got nothing to do with it. In light of this, we'll wait until the league's investigation is complete. The Raptors remain eager to bring Kawhi back to Toronto and look forward to a swift resolution to our players, our organization, and our fans. A lot of people look bad in this situation. I talked about it earlier, and we'll see what happens with this Kawhi Leonard saga, but everybody looks stupid. Everybody looks dumb in this. The Clippers look like they're trying to circumnavigate the salary cap. Kawhi doesn't look good in this process. And however the dust settles, we'll have to wait and see, but that's an interesting twist there. I guess I never thought about that, Brent. You saying, well, if they're going to go that far to tell everybody pump the brakes on this trade, maybe there is a chance that they expect something to go down. And if it does, what does that mean? I have no idea what that would mean. And obviously what it would draw moving forward. But Kawhi Leonard, Clippers, just like I said, a really bad look for everybody. And we'll see. I mean, I almost hope this trade does go down so all sides can just kind of wipe their cleans and move forward.
I think if it doesn't, it's going to be the biggest rescinded trade since the Chris Paul one to the Lakers, the NBA nixed.
That's right. Right after the lockout, right?
Yep.
Right after the lockout, and the whole lockout was so there's some more parity, and then 15 minutes later, Dr. Jerry Buss and the Buss family was like, yeah. Why don't we just go ahead and grab Chris Paul here real quick? Okay, let's do this. A couple things we could do coming up here. Darren Smith coming up at 4:30. Andy Heilbrunn coming up at 5. I want to get into a couple NBA topics here. Shams had something on LeBron. Steph Curry said something on LeBron. Derek Fisher, former Los Angeles Laker, had a really interesting take on LeBron as well, which I think there's some accuracy on. We'll talk LeBron. Where's LeBron going to end up? And also some of those stats, if I can get to them, I am, of what the World Cup is doing. And if I can't, then I'll just do it with Darren and kind of talk about what the significance of these stats mean in the United States as far as how soccer is doing and how the World Cup is doing. So we'll do all that coming up next. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. We're live on the iHeartRadio app. This is Schaefer and Sleva Show on San Diego Sports 760. All right, San Diego Sports 760, your home for live coverage of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Get daily match updates from the opening match to the final, July 19th. Here, live play-by-play, the most anticipated games in 2026 World Cup coverage. Lives right here on San Diego Sports 760. It's been a phenomenal World Cup. We're going to have Darren Smith join us in about 12 minutes or so, and we'll talk a little bit about the World Cup. We'll talk. I haven't got his thoughts, his opinion of USA going out. I'll tell him a little bit about being in Mexico City for that Mexico-England game. Not at the game, but just in the mix of it there. One of the coolest experiences I've ever had, just being around a sporting event. But we'll get into that. And France is the first one to crack the Final Four. Some more games here over the next couple of days will determine the Final Four that are left. France wins a little bit earlier. Obviously, we had that game here on San Diego Sports 760. Okay, it's kind of funny. I find it a little fascinating, this LeBron stuff that's going on and him picking a spot and everything else. Let me tell you this. Brent, I know you're a big NBA fan as well, so I think you're a perfect person to talk with on this. LeBron announced the day before free agency that he was not coming back to the Lakers. And if you would have told me we're 10 days in and he still hasn't made a decision yet of where he's going, I would tell you that that's the least surprising news if you've ever watched or covered LeBron James. I don't know if you guys know this, but LeBron kind of likes attention. He's a little bit of an attention guy. And if he could drag this thing out for 6 months, he would do it. And if ESPN can run specials every single day of the top 27 teams that have a shot at LeBron, they would do it. It's a perfect marriage there. Me, personally, not as interested on a day-to-day basis, but there are some, places I'd like to see where LeBron ends up. And there are a couple of teams out there that I think would be a really, really good fit. But I covered the man for 8 years. Covered it for X amount of years up in Los Angeles, still do a daily NBA Laker show as well in the morning. So I'm very well aware of how LeBron likes to conduct business, and give him credit for it. I mean, clearly knows what he's doing. What do they say? Any news is better than no news. Well, LeBron has found a way to master that one. Let me play this for everybody here because Brent, let's do the Shams one because I think the Shams one is the latest one out there. Shams was talking about just kind of the latest on LeBron James, and then I want to read a couple of quotes here. One from Steph Curry on potentially playing with LeBron, and then one on Derek Fisher that I think is kind of cold-blooded, but I also think very accurate. Let's take a listen to Shams.
Hannah, all of the information so far is funneled through agent Rich Paul with LeBron James, and so they've been in a process of gathering information. And one interesting wrinkle that has occurred in the last several days is some of the leading suitors for LeBron James, whether that's a Golden State, a Cleveland, Miami, Minnesota, Philadelphia, some of them have been able to send a voice note to LeBron James via Rich Paul. So whether it's an owner, a president, or a general manager being able to record a voice note, I'm told, send it to Rich Paul, and that makes its way to LeBron James. This is just a part of LeBron James's process of studying as he makes a decision. He has not been in a rush. There's been no timetable that he's been operating under. I'm told there's been a lot of family time, friends time, golf, of course, over the last couple of weeks. The last two he's spent in the Akron, Ohio area, including with one of his close friends that he grew up with in Brandon Weems, who's now one of the leading executives of the Cleveland Cavaliers under President Kobe Altman. So the process continues, and it's unclear whether Cleveland or Miami have been among the teams that have sent a voice note to LeBron via Rich Paul. Again, they kind of don't need to. They already had him in their buildings in the recent past.
Brent, you send a voice note to Rich Paul or LeBron, anything? Do you send anything out there? I'm just curious because I did not know that part of the presentation process is send a voice note to my agent, and then maybe I'll take a listen to it, because your voice note could actually determine whether I end up playing for your franchise or not. What are we doing here? What's happening here? What is that report?
does he think he's Bill Murray or something? Because that's how Bill Murray does his movie roles, because he doesn't own a phone. He has like an answering machine, so you have to call and leave a message, and then he checks his machines, and if he gets back to you, then he might do your movie. But you have to just leave a voicemail and hope that he might check it and call back.
Brother,
that's what this seems
what's
like
happening here. What's happening? When I heard Sean, I mean, listen, I listen to a lot of that stuff, and listening to Shams, and they're giving the latest, okay, here's where we are. Maybe they're going to say something. I think it's down to these 4 teams. This is why this fit would be good. And when I heard people are sending voice notes, and those will go to Clutch, which is Rich Paul, and that may go to LeBron. And he's taking notes here. I mean, he's got, if your voice note hits it out of the park, I mean, LeBron might be playing for your team next year. Oh, that is the roll of the eyes like this is not a real story, but it is. Let me just throw a couple other things in here as well. I saw this a little bit earlier today as well. Steph Curry, LeBron going to his 24th season, me going into my 18th, the battles we've had. That'd be such a unique story in NBA history, in sports history, but a little premature right now to talk about it. That's Steph Curry talking about if he had an opportunity to play with LeBron. We know that team has been kind of thrown into the mix. I thought there was some real momentum early on. Now I feel like that momentum's going away. That tells me that LeBron probably wants to play somewhere where he actually has a chance of competing for a championship, and I don't think that's going to happen with the Golden State Warriors. And then this last tweet that I think was really interesting. This was, I think, on Yahoo Sports and Clutch Points. Derek Fisher on LeBron James. And for those who know D. Fish, former Los Angeles Laker, won 5 championships with Kobe Bryant, was an integral part of the 5 championships that the Lakers had, Shaq and Kobe, and then Pau and Kobe. Here's what he said. He said, a lot of people didn't love his time in LA. They've already moved on. I got to be honest with you. I think that is a very, very, very accurate statement. And I for me, I think it's a little bit different. I feel like I could be a little bit more objective, but it's interesting because his time in LA, just his time as a Laker, fans are everywhere. So, I mean, I grew up in San Diego, California, and I would do anything to go to the sports arena and listen to Chick Hearn and Stu Lance and watch a Laker game from the San Diego Sports Arena, which is still there, by the way. Don't get me started on Midway Rising and everything else. You guys know my opinion there. Got to freaking build a stadium there, right? Maybe I am going to get a shovel and start freaking building a stadium there. But D. Fish saying what I think a lot of people think, and then saying at the end they've already moved on, is very interesting. And I think a lot of Laker fans have moved on. I think a lot of Laker fans, to be honest with you, I think are happy that the chapter of LeBron James with the Lakers is over. All right, Darren Smith's going to come join us. We got to talk some World Cup. I want to get his thoughts on the teams that remain. I want to get his thoughts on the United States. I want to get his thoughts on Mexico. I want to get his thoughts on if he thought this was a successful run for the United States. Does this World Cup feel a little bit different than previous World Cups? We'll look into those numbers, these just absurd numbers that are coming out as far as TV viewing in the United States. We'll do all that coming up next. Of course, I'm going to slip in a couple Padre questions as well. Stay right here. We're live on the iHeartRadio app. We're also live on YouTube. Just search Schaefer and Sliwa on YouTube. This is San Diego Sports 760. All right, DraftKings is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, California. The Cup is down to its final matches. One trophy, one champion. DraftKings has you covered for every single one. The DraftKings app is now live in California, so whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every match, every moment, all in one app right here in California, the world's biggest stage. It's in the palm of your hand. New DraftKings customers sign up with the code SD760. Spend $5 to get $200 in total rewards over 21 days. That's code SD760 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Event trading offered by DraftKings Predictions, a CFTC registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click to claim, issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollaries that expire in 1 year. Ends July 19th. Terms dkng.co/predictions promo.
This report is sponsored by Fiesta de Reyes in Old Town San Diego. The Padres and Diamondbacks are getting set for Game 4 of their series tonight down at Petco Park. It's going to be Merrill Kelly going against Griffin Canning. First pitch tonight is at 6:40. In NBA news, the Clippers and Raptors trade centered around Kawhi Leonard will not be completed until the NBA investigation into whether or not the Clippers' circumvented salary cap is completed. The Clippers, in a statement today, said that the trade can only be finalized if Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, though, the Raptors issued their own statement saying that they would wait for the league's finding rather than assuming that risk. In World Cup news, we got one final from earlier. France defeated Morocco 2-0. Drive into lobster ceviche, creamy lobster guac, cheesy lobster quesadillas, and more only at Casa de Reyes. It's Lobster Fest, and it's only in July. Hurry in this month before it's gone. Casa de Reyes or Casa de Lobster. You decide. Visit casadereyes.com.
All right, it's been a phenomenal World Cup run. It's been fun to watch. We had France a little bit earlier. Mbappe scores another goal. It's been exciting. The stars have shown up, and I'm excited to have Darren Smith on the show. Obviously, man, it needs no introduction. We'll slip in a couple Padre questions as well. D, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I am good. I am enjoying this World Cup, and every time I talk about it, every time I think about it, I also am starting to count down how many more matches there.
You broke up there a little bit, Darren. You there? We'll work on getting Darren back. And Brent, you just give me the heads up if he's there, and we're all good to go. So a little bit of disconnection there. Trying to think. He's trying to count down the matches. Maybe he's trying to indicate SDFC time. He can get back to calling games for SDFC. So I'm sure that's probably part of that angle there. So we'll wait for Darren. D, you there, bud?
I am. Sorry about that. That's never happened to me before. So my bad. My apologies. Don't know. I sit in the same spot every single time I talk to you guys. So I don't know what the difference is today, but my apologies.
No, all good. So you were saying that you're counting down the games, and then it cut out right there. What'd you say after that?
Yeah, already starting to feel a little melancholy about the end of the tournament, but it's been so much fun, and I will say I am starting to look forward now to SDFC resuming action, and spent a little bit of time out at the Performance Center yesterday, so learned a little bit about one of the new players that they're adding and some of their off-season plans and what the approach is going to be for the final 19 games. But yeah, I mean, I've so enjoyed this World Cup. Even yesterday without a game, I was like, oh, what am I going to do with myself? I don't know what's going to happen when this tournament's over. But, man, it has just been a blast to watch. And the best might still be to come, too.
You know what's been great? I think this is what I've noticed, and this tells you a lot. I mean, of course, I know people in the States wanted to see USA go as far as they did. But I was telling Brent a little bit earlier, I'm like, listen, I don't think that's had – I think the impact, it would have just amplified the tournament. But I don't think it took anything away. And I think people weren't just watching, hey, I'm just watching USA matches, or hey, I'm just watching Mexico matches. I don't think that's been the case at all. And that's driving around, or you're walking around and you're looking into a bar. There are a lot of people and just attention on the World Cup. Does it feel different than previous years? And this is a conversation that we were having before. Does it feel different, and does it feel like there is more buzz around the World Cup? And why do you think it is, if you do think that it feels different than previous World Cups?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's a good point. And I think part of it is because people got invested, like they do every 4 years, in the U.S. men's national team. And in this region, they also get incredibly invested in the Mexican national team. So we live in this really unique area where you have two teams that are incredibly popular. And that's good for us, right? It's good for us in sports radio or sports media, and it has been for as long as both teams have been in the World Cup. But I think also having it on home soils mattered. People took a keen interest into how the tournament was going to operate, for better or for worse, and there's been a bit of both. I think people recognize some of these venues, so when they flip on the television, they go, oh, that's where the Chiefs play, or that's where the Patriots play, or hey, I've seen a Super Bowl there, right? So you know, those are just the venues in the U.S., so I do think people are always going to have that interest. It is on at times where we don't have to dramatically adjust our schedules like we did with Qatar. It's not really in competition, respectfully. I know there's baseball fans all over the place, but it's not in competition with the NFL the way it was when they had to switch it to December. So I just think it has a lot of things going for it. You know, I think there's the pride of having it on North American soil. There are 3 different host nations. There were at least, all 3 now having been eliminated. So I just think there's a lot of people that, that relate to it, that connect with it in ways that is very unique here, that could only happen if you were having this tournament in the summer here in North America.
Darren, I'm going to read some numbers to you, and I know you've already saw this because I saw one of your tweets responding to it, but what does this say to you that the USA-Belgium game was the most watched soccer telecast in U.S. history, over 33 million viewers. It was competing versus big-time NFL games, and I'm talking Super Bowl games. I'm talking AFC, NFC championship games. Some of the, not just a and this is what the NFL is. We know that it's king. What does it tell you that that game specifically had over 33 million viewers here in the States?
First thing that crosses my mind is what a missed opportunity, frankly, that they picked the absolute worst time to play one of their worst game of the tournament by far. It's not even close, but not to be all glass half empty. I think that there's probably a lot of people maybe that tuned in who might stick around. You know, you're not going to convert all those people. We understand that. You're not going to convert all those people into big time dyed-in-the-wool soccer fans. But can you convert some of them? Can some of those people that have maybe never gone to an SDFC game say, hey, I want to go to an SDFC game and see what that's all about, right? See what it's like attending one of these in person. See if it's at all similar. So I think there will be more positive takeaways from the tournament than negative by far. I don't think that's even a question. But I do feel like it was a big missed opportunity for people that tuned in a record number and watched the national team leak down its leg a little bit. You know, like it just
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. And, you know, even if people sort of, okay, everybody else is doing this and I'm going to, you know, I'm not a soccer fan, but I'm going to, and then it's like, well, this is why I don't watch, you know, because the team always sets me up for disappointment. You know, so there's always a little bit of that. But like I said, the overall good of this tournament and the good positive takeaways, I think, are going to dramatically outweigh the negatives.
That's such a good point. That is missed opportunity. It's like, hey, we had a grand opening of our restaurant and everybody showed up and everyone was super excited. And it was like, yeah, the oven wasn't working. You know, it's like,
yeah. And then like the smoke alarm went off, you know, like, I mean, because think about it, tomorrow, you know, we could be set for the USA versus Spain. And, you know, I think that that's a match that, you know, respectfully, Belgium's, you know, I was on Talking Belgium with you guys last week and you know, I thought at the time, and I believed at the time, I thought that the U.S. would beat the version of Belgium that I had seen, which was not impressive at all. And then there was a lot of other things that happened from when we got off the phone and ended that conversation and that match kicked off. But I think people really would have been excited. Like Lamine Yamal might be the best player in the world. And the U.S. as a host nation would have been taking on Spain at SoFi Stadium tomorrow at 12 noon. Like, how great would that have been? So, you know, and it would have been an opportunity to take a step further. I think a lot of people sort of identified that game, that round as, hey, listen, you make it to that game and there's no disputing that you've had a good tournament. But alas, they soiled the sheets.
Well, I'll ask you this because I think that's a great way to look at it. When you walk away from phenomenal numbers, maybe there's more buzz around this. Maybe it's, listen, I don't think it has just to do with the United States. I think there's some just unbelievable world-renowned players that even casual fans, they know these names, and that obviously helps the sport a ton. When you walk away, do you walk away that it was how do you describe the play of U.S. and did they make any progress? Because for me personally, I kind of always I took a step back. It's like, look, I get the hype. You guys can hype this up as much as you want. I understand how many of these players are playing in Europe. I get that there's a potential for them to have a real run, but I'm gonna have my hesitation. And the round of 16 just proved to me, it's like, yeah. Until they actually go up against some of the best countries or top 10 countries in the world, I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Can you look past the game against Belgium and say, yeah, but I actually really think they made some progress, or can you not because of the game against Belgium?
No, I can't. We've had players play in Europe before, you know, so it's not like this is new or exclusive to this group, to this edition of the World Cup. We've had players that have played, you know, maybe, you know, not at the highest levels where you have starters, like a guy like a Pulisic who's playing for a Champions League winner. But, you know, we've had players that have played in Europe before. I honestly, I don't see how anybody can make the case that we've really progressed from 2022. unless you want to say that everything that happened in that game was circumstantial because of the red card, the Balogun red card, the sporting and political controversy that surrounded that, the suspension of the suspension, et cetera, which I do think was a factor. I do. I don't think you can get around it. I don't think it was 100% what sunk the U.S., but I think you'd be hard-pressed to make the case that this team has really taken a giant step further, or a giant step forward, I should say, from 2022. They won a game in the knockout round. Well, there was an extra round of knockout games, so unfortunately that has to be added into the conversation. But in terms of getting your pants pulled down by a European power, right? Not even France, not a World Cup winner, right? Belgium's not won a World Cup. Netherlands not won a World Cup. Runner-up 3 times, but they're not France. It's not Germany. It's not one of those. It feels, it feels very similar for me than it did 4 years ago, and that's after going out and splashing the pot and going out and getting a big name coach like Mauricio Pochettino. I just don't think this was some huge step forward for the U.S.
It's refreshing to hear, to be honest with you, because I feel like there were too many people trying to pitch me on like, no, hey, they made all this problem. Like, did we watch the same game? I mean, I think you said it best in the beginning. It's what a missed opportunity. And I listen, at the end of the day, you could try to paint this as best as you can, but the results were in front of everybody. They did play their worst game on the biggest stage. They look like deer in headlights. It was sloppy. Like, there were a lot of things I take away, and I don't know how much of it was positive, and that's okay. Maybe expectations, are growing for USA. Maybe that's one of the positives. But
yeah,
I think that's refreshing to hear that you're not. Again, I don't think we should BS ourselves that they made some major progress or some huge strides. So I'm with you on that.
No. I mean, I don't feel like we are setting ourselves up for some sort of unprecedented level of success in 2030. If anything, it makes me look around and look at the ages of some of the players that were on the squad and think, well, how many of these guys are going to be a part of that? So, yeah, and it's also, I don't want to sound like it's all negative either. Like, I think there are a lot of good takeaways from the tournament, right? I think you're going to convert a lot of people into fans who maybe otherwise weren't. I hope people stick around. I hope people that got into it just as a casual observer, again, will come out and see, maybe what some of the future for the U.S. men's national team might look like. We got a couple of under-20 World Cup guys in Luca Bambino and Pedro Soma. So those guys might be part of the future in 2030 based on what they've already done with the U.S. Soccer Federation and the youth national teams. So it's not all negative, but just strictly speaking about the senior team, the team that went out there, that looked like gangbusters against Paraguay, that did what it had to do against Australia. The Turkey match is whatever. They rotated, accomplished all their goals. The Bosnian team, probably one of the weaker teams that we had in this tournament, maybe doesn't qualify if it's 32 teams. And then, again, the Belgian side, which really didn't look good. I think the takeaway for most is that the U.S. just looked terrible, not that Belgium looked that amazing. So it's not like anybody's picking Belgium to get through Spain tomorrow, I can tell you that.
D, appreciate the time as always. I'm going to just slip this in real quick. I know I got to go to break here, but when you told me about the Azteca and how, the Mexico national team, it's not common that they lose at the Azteca. So I ended up, now I didn't go to the game, but I ended up being in Mexico City for the Mexico-England game and watched on the streets, literally in the streets where they have all this, all these screens, and got the whole experience there in Mexico City. It was phenomenal. And part of you weren't trying to sell me, but you sold me on going, and I did go, and I got a chance to be there. Now my next accomplishment will be to actually go to a game at the Azteca. So wanted to let you know about that.
Good. Well, hey, thanks for the invite, B. Hope you stay dry. And C, was it worth it? I mean, was it good just to be near it? Because that was an epic. That was one of the most epic matches of this entire tournament up to this point.
It was phenomenal. Worth every penny and every second. So All
Great.
right, buddy. They're yelling at me to go to break. Appreciate you coming on.
Right. Bye-bye.
All right, that is Darren Smith right there. Stay right here. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Schaefer and Sliwa Show on San Diego Sports 760. San Diego Sports 760, your home for live coverage of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Get daily match updates from the opening match of the final, July 19th. Here, live play-by-play, the most anticipated games. 2026 World Cup coverage lives on San Diego Sports 760. Great conversation with Darren Smith. By the way, Annie Heilbrunn, who I mentioned, is coming up here at 5 o'clock. So just in a few minutes, we'll talk all San Diego Padres. I got a lot more stuff I want to talk about Padres related. So we'll probably spend 5 to 5:30 just focus on Padres baseball. So just a heads up on that. Real quick here on the World Cup and what we were just getting into and some of these numbers that have come out. So I was trying to explain it, to Darren. So these numbers just came out when I started the show. Most watched soccer telecast in U.S. history. It's the USA-Belgium game. This is the Monday night game on Fox. Most watched telecast on any network since the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was on February 8th, 2026. It's the most watched non-NFL telecast on any network since 2016. World Series Game 7 on Fox, 40 million viewers. The peak audience was 41 million viewers from 9:15 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So it gives you an idea of when that was, probably when the game was still in reach. And then the top local markets, Kansas City, Boston, Seattle, St. Louis, and Philadelphia in regards to that game. I thought, Darren, I think that was such a interesting point of maybe there is going to be some momentum here on the soccer front. I think we have this conversation all the time, but I also know the way this country operates. It's an NFL, MLB, and NBA, and obviously the NFL being king. When the World Cup's not going on, no, I don't think. I think it's different. In some of these other countries, all France cares about is soccer. All Spain cares about is soccer. All Argentina and Brazil care about is soccer. We don't. We got other sports that we're interested in. And even me, I'm probably not the best example, but I'm not watching a lot of Premier League games when the season's not going on or when their season is going on. I'm watching more of the international games. Maybe I changed that with Chelsea, part of the Feliciano and the group here and his wife that were they part owners of Chelsea. Maybe I got an English Premier League that I can start watching. But nonetheless, those numbers were bonkers. Those numbers were amazing. And hopefully that's, some real tangible success there. But we nobody's got to BS each other on walking away from that round of 16 USA and Belgium and pretend like, hey, that was amazing. Hey, you know what? They've made such great strides. They got their asses kicked and they got embarrassed in front of those 33 million viewers. So I don't know if that was the greatest look for the United States and certainly not for the USA men's national team. Padres got a game coming up tonight against the Arizona Diamondbacks. They only got 4 games left before the All-Star break. Andy Heilbrunn's going to join us here in about 5 minutes, and we're going to talk Padres baseball. I've got some other things I want to do at 5:15 in regards to the Padres as well. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sleva Show, San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by rockauto.com. The Padres and Diamondbacks are getting set for game 4 of their series tonight down at Petco Park. It's going to be Griffin Canning going for the Padres and Merrill Kelly going for Arizona. First pitch is at 6:40. In NBA news, the Clippers and Raptors trade centered around Kawhi Leonard will not be completed until the NBA's investigation onto whether the Clippers circumvented the salary cap is done. The Clippers in a statement today said the trade can only be finalized if the Raptors ownership agrees, or ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. The Raptors, meanwhile, issued their own statement saying that they'll wait for the league's findings rather than assuming that risk. It's probably a smart call, Toronto. World Cup news, we got one final from earlier today. France defeated Morocco 2-0. A failed strut can turn any drive into a rough ride. When it's time for repairs, Rock Auto makes finding the right part easy. Shop name brands at lower prices and have parts shipped directly to your door. All the parts your car will ever need, Rock Auto.
It's Schaefer and Sliwa. John Schaefer and San Diego's own Alan Sliwa. Your Schaefer and Sliwa.
All right, 2 hours in the books, 1 hour left to go. Padres taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight. Very excited to have Andy Heilbrunn on, covers the San Diego Padres, does a great job for the UT. Andy, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great, Alan. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I appreciate that. So I think we're all good, right? Because they scored 10 runs yesterday. They had 13 hits. They played a little small ball. 2-game winning streak. So all is good. We're fine.
Everything's great. I mean,
okay.
It's smooth sailing from here all the way to the World Series.
That's what I wanted to hear. Hey, listen, I will tell you this, with the way they have been playing and any positive momentum, I think you would agree with me, is positive, and we'll take it. That being said, just based off your experience, can one game where they do play as good as they did yesterday and Michael King looks great on the mound, and not that that's a surprise or a shock, and they put up 10 runs, and after they just looked like they were absolutely sleepwalking in that first game against Arizona, they win 2 in a row. Is it possible for your opinion to change, anything to change over 2 games, or is it literally just 2 games and that's all it is?
Yeah, I do think it's possible. I mean, I think it's funny because myself, and I feel like all of us, the bar has kind of gotten so low that when a starting pitcher goes 5 innings, we're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, and when there's 1 win, much less 2 wins, you do start to maybe dream on a few things. But I think that you need the 1 win to get things going, and to start with what could be a possible turnaround. Now, will they actually do a turnaround? I don't know, but you need that 1 win to kind of spark the optimism. Now, they had that against the Dodgers on Sunday, and then they, like you said, they came out with the clunker on Monday night, but I think they were pretty embarrassed by that. I mean, they had talked all pregame about how this was an important homestand and they're neck and neck with the Diamondbacks and even the Blue Jays. They it's a team that they feel like they can be competitive against. So I think that this is still a team that feels like they've got a shot, and I think factually they do still have a shot, but there are still concerns. But one thing I will say about last night's game is I think that's the kind of game that an offense can really start to feel confident in, because they did it in a few different ways. You had a home run by Campusano. You had some doubles by Andujar. You had that first run scored with Fernando doing some great base running and being chaotic on the base paths like we're used to seeing him do, and some small ball, force out and everything to kind of get that first run across the board. So I think when your offense can do a number of different things and you win like that, you just keep tacking on runs throughout the game, you start to feel a little bit more confident in your offense, and that's a good sign for them, or hopefully a good sign for them.
And do you agree with this, that it feels like in your time watching and covering the team when Mike Schultz was the manager, I felt like there are a lot of times people would criticize the strategy of small ball and why are they playing like this? And maybe Mike Schultz just thought this is the way we're going to win games and this is what we have to do. Yesterday, there was more small ball, and I know 10 runs is not exactly a small ball type of strategy, and you're not always going to have 13 hits. And let's leave yesterday to be kind of a unique night for the Padres. But do you think they need more of that? Do you think the hey, just try to play cleaner baseball, try to play a little bit more old school baseball, try to, if a guy's on second, or if a guy's on second with nobody out, just try to move him to third. Do you think this team specifically, because that Jake Cronenworth 3-run homer on Tuesday was basically the Padres offense, they just don't have enough guys that do that on a consistent basis where it's like, hey, one inning goes, they're going to have one big inning. That's not necessarily the case for the Padres. You think they need more of the small ball?
I do think they need more of the small ball, and they need more of the productive outs like you were talking about. They had more of those at the beginning of the season, and then those kind of went away. And it's funny because Fernando in the post game last night talked about how that's the way you play baseball. You know, it's not always the big hits. It's not always the extra base hits. I thought that stood out to me when he was like, it was something along the lines of like, that's how you play the game. And I think he meant also that baseball as a whole has gotten away from that, which he's right. But this Padres team has also gotten away from that. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't have enough guys who are consistently hitting for power, hitting for extra bases to put up enough runs throughout the game. So yeah, why not manufacture some runs? Why not get yourself on the board? And even Craig Stammen talked about it last night that, he said we've got a manufacture to start the game, and then hopefully put up enough runs to get the lead and maybe not have to see their leverage guys. Get ahead enough where we're not going to see their leverage guys because the game's not close anymore. Now that can be hard to do with small ball, as you know. Like you're going to have some power there in order to do that, like they had last night. So you're probably not going to do that every night, but I think that they do. I think that they would benefit from getting back to some more small ball.
Yeah, I'm trying to see here and trying to look to see exactly that quote. I saw it a little bit earlier, but I'm with you on that. And to see that coming from Tatis and saying, hey, that's how the game used to be played. And I think you got to play to your strengths. And
yes,
that is, I mean, if you do look at the Padres, I don't think anybody's thinking they're going to score 6-7 runs a game and that's going to be their strength. We know what their strength is. Now, I know that's kind of changed as the season has progressed because the pitching has struggled. I'll kind of get your opinion. Go ahead.
Sorry, Alan. He said,
No.
I got the quote from Tatis. He said, it's a great way to play baseball, the right way to play baseball. The era of baseball that has gotten away. This is the era of baseball that has gotten away from that, So, hey, listen, if the players are bought in a little bit, then that makes it easier, right?
100%. And again, I think I go back to kind of playing with their strengths. And sometimes when you're not trying to play, when you're not trying to hit a home run, maybe they lay into a couple of home runs. I'm looking at the standings, and I know this is what we're going to do between now and the trade deadline. And every day that we're going to look at them, and I will say over the last 2 days, they did jump 2 teams, Arizona and Pittsburgh. So that's nice to see. Padres working their way up. What does it have to look like for you? I know AJ Preller is in his own world, and I know most people don't think AJ Preller is going to sell or give up or whatever the case is. Now, we'll see what happens. But if they just hover around 500 as we get closer to the trade deadline, they're sitting at 46-46. What do you think that would indicate to AJ Preller? Right now, they're 4.5 games back of a wild card. Let's just pretend, let's fast forward 2 weeks from now, and they're sitting in identical position. They're 4.5 games back of a wild card. They're 500 is exactly where they're sitting. Do you think that will indicate to AJ Preller, based off of, okay, we're this far away, this is where we're sitting, I've had plenty of time to see what this team is, do you think he's adding to the team if it looks exactly how it looks today in a couple of weeks?
If he's adding to the team, if it looks exactly like this, I think it's on the margins. I don't think it's with a big trade like Mason Miller, but I will say that if they're sitting at 500, it's the worst place they can be. And I say that because of what you just mentioned. Like, they don't really know what to do if you're at 500. If you're tanking and you're losing, okay, well, you can maybe make the case. Let's make some changes. Let's try to get the team better for next year, that sort of thing. If you've started an uprise and all of a sudden you've won, 7 of the next 10 and then 13 of the next 18 or whatever, well, that makes your decision a little easier. And part of this, I think, is also selling to fans. Like, I think that they want to show fans that they're committed either way. But when you're at 500, you're in no man's land. And it's very difficult to know exactly what to do in that situation. And what, you don't necessarily want your players to think that you quit on them. At the same time, how realistic is it for them to go deep in the playoffs? But I think for pretty much everyone, I feel like if you still got a chance at the playoffs, and I do think that things are going to change quite a bit in the second half, and teams are going to go up, teams are going to go down. Who knows if this plays out to the last week or two of the season with teams moving around. But they're in a tough spot because they don't control their own destiny, and they don't have the tiebreakers against the teams that are currently in the wild card spots with the Cubs, the Phillies, and the Cardinals. And again, I'm sure that those might change and they could leapfrog certain teams and, maybe not have to worry about that sort of thing. But it's a lot of ifs. You're looking at a lot of ifs. So I do think it's possible. I don't rule them out for a playoff run. I don't rule AJ Preller out for making big trades, but this, I think that there's starting to be a reality that you've got to have a plan B. There's got to be other options besides we're just going for it.
That's such a good point and it is kind of it's the worst place to be in sports. It's where you're hovering. I'll use an NBA analogy. It's like that team that's 8th place or 7th place in the East or the Western Conference. They got no shot of winning a championship, and they also don't get a draft pick, right? And I think I think this scenario with the Padres, I think the equivalence here is the fact that if you're AJ Preller, it's like I'm just close enough to convince myself that I could stay in the mix here. And I'm also just far enough to ask the question of, am I, is there really a scenario here that makes sense to be aggressive or not? It'll be fascinating to watch. And I think I've heard a few people, Annie, say that what's the message that you're sending to your fans? That's always a tough one for me because I don't think you can operate and run your franchise based off of what the fans want you to do. I think you have to make decisions. It's not a popularity contest, right? I think you got to make decisions thinking about, well, if our goal is to win a World Series, if our goal is to get to a World Series, if that's the ultimate goal, I don't think you can line, perfectly with fans. Fans are emotional. They're all over the place. I'm a fan. I come on 2 days ago, the world was going to end. And today I'm like, hey, they're moving in the right direction. You shouldn't take my opinion. How do you balance that? How do you balance they want to sell tickets, they want fans to come out there, they want people to believe that they're, exactly what they've been doing now for a handful of years of being all in, but how do you also be responsible with your franchise of the big picture?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it can be a tricky thing, and I also don't think that it sends maybe the right message to fans all the time. That's like, we just want you to come to the ballpark and spend your money, essentially. Yes, kind of, yes, I get it. You kind of need that because but at the same time, that shouldn't be on the fans. Because the role of the team is to make the team as great as it can be, and the fans will follow, right? So
sure.
It really shouldn't be on the fans to have to burden themselves with, well, if I don't come, there's not going to be enough money for a free agent or whatever. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. That's my opinion. But with AJ Preller, one thing that I do think is important is it's probably not going to be him just making that decision. It's going to be, the front office, CEO, Eric Grupner, the ownership, how much money is he going to get? How much leeway, how much rope is he going to get to do things and what is the ownership going to be? Right. So I think that all of that is going to play in, and everybody's probably got different feelings and opinions on stuff. So how that all shakes out, I think, is probably pretty fascinating and hard to say at this point. But I do think they're kind of in a wait and see mode where they're waiting and seeing how these next few weeks plan out. And I think that's really all you can do. The benefit of it being about a month away is kind of to your, I guess, advantage. I don't know if that's the right word, but the team should be able to hopefully show them that, yes, they got to go. At the same time, I think that's kind of hard because because the starting rotation is what it is. It's
Sure.
hard to, if the offense is doing everything it's doing and it's still kind of rocking and rolling, but the starting rotation, just for the fact that there's just been too many injuries and too many setbacks and too many guys just having a hard time this season, it might be hard to go forward, So it really is kind of a fascinating place that they're in.
Well, hopefully, Andy, if there is a move that's made, it's not just about this year, but it also is helping them for next year as well, or the next couple of years. So I'm sure, and Preller's done a good job at that, of moves that he makes.
Yeah.
Obviously, guys that he can get control over and have them be a part of the organization for a couple of years. So appreciate you coming on. Thank you for the insight. Hopefully, the next time you and I chat, the Padres are continuing to move in the right direction, and we have better, more positive things to talk about on about the Padres. So thank you for coming on.
Sounds great. Thanks, Alan. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, Andy. All right. Andy Heilbrunn right there. Great stuff from her. There's a couple things I want to hit on from what she said. I love what she said about kind of being stuck in the middle. Also, there's a few things that are Padre related that I'm going to hit on. Some power rankings on ESPN, Padres plummeting. But Brad and I had a conversation on the side that I want to bring up about all these teams that are in the mix here. Does that help the league in the sense of making a case for a salary cap, not making a case for a salary cap? We'll do that coming up next. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sleeva Show set on San Diego Sports 760. All right, DraftKings is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, California. The Cup is down to its final matches. One trophy, one champion. DraftKings has you covered for every single one. The DraftKings app is now live in California. So whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every match, every moment, all in one app right here in California. The world's biggest stage is right in the palm of your hand. New DraftKings customers sign up with the code SD760. Spend $5 to get $200 in total rewards over 21 days. That's code SD760 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Event trading offered by DraftKings. Predictions, a CFTC registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click to claim issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. Ends July 19th. Terms at dkng.co/predictions promo. All right, we got a 4-pack of tickets to see Santana with the Doobie Brothers on August 11th at North Island Credit Amphitheater. Make it a summer of live at North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Get 4 lawn tickets for just $99. Get your friends and grab tickets now at livenation.com. We're going to actually do a giveaway here. We're going to do it on the talkback. I proposed this question earlier. Should Mason Miller be an untouchable? Should he be? Is there no scenario out there where you trade Mason Miller? Should he be that's just not even a conversation. AJ Preller getting some calls. I don't care what the prospects are. I don't care how much you want to give me for Mason Miller. Should he be an untouchable? And if you think he should or you think he shouldn't, I want you guys to go on the iHeartRadio app, search in the upper right-hand corner, 760, and just hit that record, talkback. You get up to 30 seconds, and the best talkback that we get between now and the end of the show will give away these tickets to see Santana. So that's our giveaway for today. And should Mason Miller be an untouchable? You know, I think that conversation we're having with Annie was such a good conversation, and she's great, by the way. She's phenomenal at what she does. But the thing I think I liked about it most was trying to evaluate. She said that the worst position that you can be in is kind of where the Padres are sitting. They're sitting in that no man's land. 46 and 46. Well, if you're sitting right at that 500 mark, and after you got off to that amazing start, 10 games over 500, you're 10 games below 500 since then. How do you know whether, if you're AJ Preller, if this is the right thing to do or it's not the right thing to do? What is your responsibility to the fan base to tell the fans, well, we want people to keep showing up and we want to show and give the perception? I don't think the Padres are obviously just trying to give a perception, hey, just come to a game. They want to win. I mean, clearly they've been trying to win here for a handful of years, and they put their money where their mouth is, and that's a whole separate conversation of whether you like where their finances went or you don't like where their finances went. I've had a difficult time watching this team every single night and covering the team, right? Just being here and doing the show with John and everything else and saying to myself, oh, yeah, that's one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the NL. Very difficult time trying to make that case. Frankly, I feel like I'd be disingenuous if I was trying to tell you guys that that's the case. I will tell you this. I think that the piece with AJ Preller that I think is going to be most important, I don't think people need to say, go all in and buy or sell every asset that you have. But I think that the piece that continues to stick in my head is just be responsible. And being responsible means if you do make a trade and you do get rid of some players or you decide that there's a player out there that you really want, it doesn't have to be just for this season. You can make trades that can also benefit you for next year. I'm just giving you an example, and I know it didn't work out this way. But Ramon Laureano was traded to the Padres knowing that he was also going to be a Padre this year, as did Fermin. And they haven't been good, or in Laureano's case, he's been injured. Mason Miller was traded to the Padres, not for one playoff run. The idea and the hope was they had him for a few playoff runs. It obviously didn't pan out that way. But that's the only thing that I would say. When the dust settles, the only thing that I ask AJ Preller to do in the San Diego Padres, this doesn't look like a playoff team to me. They haven't played consistent enough, good enough, smart baseball, dot your I's, cross your T's. All your players are coming through. The rotation is healthy. You could depend on this player and that. That has not been the case. So it has not looked like a playoff team to be. However, they got a little bit more time to decide whether the right move is to add some pieces. But if you're going to add pieces, I don't think you could be adding pieces because you're trying to make a run for this year. I think if you're adding pieces, it's more of a bigger picture and not obviously where the Padres are currently sitting right now. And we'll see what that looks like over time. Brett and I were having a conversation. We can do this when we come back, but we're having a conversation. If you go look at the MLB standings right now, there's a lot of smaller market teams that are in the mix. Does that help the conversation or hurt the conversation when it comes to what's going to happen to baseball after this year, a potential salary cap and everything else? So we'll break that down. I thought that was interesting. ESPN had a power rankings for the Padres. I want to read exactly what it said, and why they've plummeted on there. But they have won 2 games in a row, and obviously the Padres got a game a little bit later tonight as well. Stay right here. We'll get into that coming up next. This is San Diego Sports 760.
Hey guys, it is Schaefer again for my friends at the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. Get out to Hamul this July with their World Cup watch parties going on right now at Tony Gwynn Sports Pub. You can catch every match on the big screen at Tony Gwynn Sports Pub during their World Cup watch parties. You can enjoy game day specials, great food, cold drinks, an electric atmosphere for every match. Grab your crew, experience all the action with Hamul while you're there. You'll love the hotel and spa. You really will. You can experience elevated luxury with their refined hotel stay, rooftop relaxation, indulgent spa treatments, all the excitement of Hamul Casino Resort seamlessly brought together now in one unforgettable destination. Take your stay to the next level with exclusive hotel packages crafted for the ultimate escape. And you're going to love their dining options, including Hamul 23 with their lobster buffet going on each and every day, plus dozens of other delicious stations at the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place.
This report is sponsored by rockauto.com. The Padres and Diamondbacks are getting set for game 4 of their series tonight down at Petco. It's going to be Merrill Kelly going for Arizona and Griffin Canning going for the Friars. First pitch tonight is at 6:40. In NBA news, the Clippers and Raptors trade with Kawhi Leonard will not be completed until the NBA's investigation into whether or not the Clippers circumvented the salary cap is completed. The Clippers, in a statement today, said that the trade can only be finalized if the Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. The Raptors, meanwhile, issued their own statement saying that they would wait for the league's findings rather than assuming that risk. World Cup, we got one final from earlier today. France defeated Morocco 2-0. A bent tie rod can quickly bring a drive to a halt. For those parts needed to get back on the road, visit rockauto.com. Find a wide selection of quality parts at reliable low prices delivered right to your door. All the parts your car will ever need, Rock Auto.
All right, we're going to be giving away a 4-pack of tickets to see Santana with the Doobie Brothers on August 11 at the North Island Credit Amphitheater. Here's how you can win them. We threw out a question here on the talkback. So for those who don't know how that works, download the iHeartRadio app, upper right-hand corner, search San Diego Sports 760, and there will be a red microphone there. You get 30 seconds to make your pitch of whether you think Mason Miller should be untouchable or not. Best case, best argument, we'll play the talk back here, and we'll give this thing away in the next half hour. Again, it's a 4-pack of tickets to see Santana with the Doobie Brothers. That concert's coming up on August 11th. So, Brent, I want to go back to a conversation you and I were having, which I thought was interesting. I'm looking at the Padres right now, and I'm looking at the standings. And let's just kind of go in order here. You got the Dodgers, the Brewers, and the Braves all on top of their division right now. You got the Cubs, the Phillies, and Miami. Yes, Miami, who I think's got the best record in baseball over at least a month, maybe a month and a half right now. They're now 9 games over 500. They're locking up the next 3 wild card spots. And then on top of that, you have the St. Louis Cardinals, the Washington Nationals, and then comes the San Diego Padres. Pittsburgh's in the mix. Arizona's in the mix. A lot of teams in the NL that are in the mix. Of course, 6 teams are making the postseason. So can you explain to me, we're having the conversation. I don't know if I fully got the thought process here, but a lot of conversation around what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen in Major League Baseball. Is there going to be a lockout? Is the owners finally going to get a salary cap? What comes to mind to you when I'm talking about all these teams that are in the mix?
For me, I think it's interesting because we're going into a potential lockout. And the main argument that is going to be made by one of the sides is going to be, oh, well, you don't need a salary cap because, we have, teams that don't spend a lot of money that are contending. Usually we have the outliers of the Brewers and Tampa Bay, and that's usually about it. But if you look at the teams that are in front of the Padres this year, Pittsburgh, I looked it up. Pittsburgh's 29th in payroll. They're ahead of the Padres. Washington is 26th in payroll. Miami is last in all the league in payroll. They're 30th. Look, even in the American League, Cleveland is in one of the wild card spots. They're 29th in payroll. Minnesota's in contention for one of those. They're 22nd in payroll. And, St. Louis is in there. They're 24th. I brought up the Brewers. They're 19th in payroll. So we have about 6 or 7 teams that are all in contention that are outside of the top 20 in payroll. If I'm the owners, I'm taking all these teams and going, look, we don't necessarily need a salary cap because look at all these teams that
are competing.
Yeah, these teams are all competing and none of them are spending money.
You know what's funny? I think for me, I look at it more like this. I look at basically the reason why I think this is a conversation. I think a lot of this stems from the Dodgers and their success. And I give the Dodgers, I could give them a lot of credit outside of just spending money. I think they do have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. I think they're ran really, really well. But let's just say there was a salary cap in baseball. And let's say, I'm just going to, I'm making up stuff here on the fly. Let's say the Dodgers could not afford to have, they couldn't afford to have they went through their salary cap and they don't have enough money for Blake Snell and give me another player. And Teoscar Hernandez. Okay. Right. I'm taking two random players. And now those two players, just taking them off of the Dodgers. And let's say one of those two players are now one on those other teams that you're talking about that have the 20th highest payroll or lower than that, as in, highest payroll lower than that. Do you think that helps the chances of one of these teams that you're talking about to potentially win win a World Series by just that addition by subtraction? You see, I never try to make the case because I think the salary cap conversation, I just want an even playing field. And there's going to be companies, there's going to be organizations that show that they're just ran better. I don't think the Padres are considered one of the best well-run teams. I think if they got a salary cap, I don't think that guarantees the Padres are going to have any more success or less success. It's going to come down to your front office anyway. So I think there's still going to be a ton of question marks, and we know some of the contracts that they have. My issue when people say, hey, here's a team that does not have a high payroll and they're going to make the playoffs. Hey, there's a team over there that is top 20 in payrolls and they're going to make the postseason. My point more than anything else, and maybe I don't know how people want it, but I'll use the NBA as an example. You can build a roster and a true championship team and be the Oklahoma City Thunder and be the San Antonio Spurs and be the Milwaukee Bucks. By the way, also the New York Knicks and the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics. I'm taking teams in different markets over these last 7-8 years. Kind of there's been a lot of different success everywhere, but everybody's still playing under the same rules. The money is still the same. I got X amount of dollars that I can spend. My biggest issue in baseball, yes, you're going to have some teams that are in the mix that have a lower payroll. Yes, you're going to have some teams that have a crazy payroll and suck as well, like the New York Mets. But why wouldn't we have defined rules all the way across the board? That's my only question. I still think if you put a salary cap tomorrow, the Dodgers are still going to be very, very good. But they also now have unbelievable advantages, but not only not having a salary cap, but they could spend as much as they want. That's only going to play to their advantage as well. So, again, I think at the end of the day, all I'm looking for, just have a fair playing field, and whatever happens after that, happens after that. You're still probably going to have a lot of teams that are bad, stay bad because they have bad front offices or bad owners, and a lot of teams that are good, stay good because they have good front offices and good owners.
I think theoretically it would spread the wealth a little more, like going back to your thing with, say, hypothetically the Dodgers, with the new cap, they wouldn't be able to afford Blake Snell and, Teoscar Hernandez. So
I'm
they
just
have to
using that as an example.
Yeah, I know. I'm just, so with that example, so they can't afford those guys. So that means they're going to have to go elsewhere. So that means, say, Miami or one of these other teams signs them. That's going to spread the wealth and make them better and make them more competitive by not being able to just hoard around with the Dodgers.
And by the way, that could hurt the Padres. Like it can. That means you have the case that John always makes, Schaefer always makes, is like, look, the more you even the playing field, the more competition the Padres are going to have just to get into the NL, just to get in the playoffs. And I keep telling them, like, that's okay. Like, as long as I know that when I walk in, it's go play pickup basketball. I'm like, we playing 5-on-5 or we're playing 5-on-3. I hate the conversation because the conversation, honestly, there are times when I have a conversation about this and I sound like I'm whining. Oh, it's not fair. It's this. I do sound like that. I'm not saying that I don't, but I'm watching other sports thrive, and there is a salary cap, and there is this. Like, why wouldn't you? Of course, you want to say that not all markets are created equal. Not all franchises are created equal. I'll give you one example, which I think will have an impact, but I think it might take a second. There's a salary cap in baseball. The Lakers are now owned by the same exact owners as the Los Angeles Dodgers. New ownership can't run the Lakers the way they run the Dodgers. But I think they will find a way over these next 5-7 years to turn the Lakers into a winner, because I think good front offices and good ownership always finds a way to win. Winners find ways to win. But I think that's the point that I would make. The point that I would make is, like I just mentioned about, I think it will at least kind of spread the wealth a little bit. And yes, there's always going to be, hey, look at this team. They looked a little bit different. Hey, look at that team. But I think at the end of the day, hopefully people know what I'm referring to here. ESPN had their power rankings. I'm going to read here real quick what they said about the Padres. The Padres went from like 11th to 14th to 15th, and now they're out down to 18th. I'm going to read to everybody what was said on ESPN about the Padres in these power rankings. I think it's just kind of interesting to look every week. If you look, they always come out on Thursdays, and it just kind of shows, all right, what team is trending in what direction. Here's what they said about the Padres. The Padres were one of the most pleasant early season surprises, winning 31 of their first 51 games, even though their starting rotation was suspect and their offense was underperforming. It has since caught up to them. The Padres are a major league worst 14-26 since they had recently lost 8 in a row, so now make it 16-26, but at one point had the worst stretch in baseball. It says Joe Musgrove and Nick Pivetta remain out, and their starting rotation is not nearly talented enough to pick up the slack. Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Xander Bogaerts, and Jackson Merrill are trending towards their worst seasons, and the lineup doesn't have nearly enough depth to make up for it. At this point, not even the Padres' standout bullpen can save them. That actually came from Alden Gonzalez, who joined us last week when I was doing a show with John. John and I, by the way, will be doing our regular shows coming up on Monday. We'll be back together. But they had the Padres at 18th in these power rankings. I thought that was interesting. The way they looked at them, the way they viewed them, the way they saw the San Diego Padres, it's an interesting perspective on that front. So, again, I've said this, standings wise, and it's good to see the Padres win a couple of games, and they did surpass Arizona and Pittsburgh. But if they're going to start getting into how many, what did I say? They're 4.5 back of Miami and Philadelphia tied as far as those final 2 wild card spots, and obviously, the Padres can still make it happen, but it's all going to come down to their play, and that's the only thing that matters. Okay, final thing we'll do, we're going to go to break here. When we come back, again, I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have a talkback, get on that iHeartRadio app, be a part of it. You got a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to see Santana with the Doobie Brothers on August 11 at North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. When we come back, I got a couple things I want to get into. One of it has to do with the World Cup schedule coming up over these next couple of days. Next couple of days, we're going to have 4 left. Only France ended up winning. And then we'll get you all ready and previewed for this game against the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Padres got their final game against Arizona. It's coming up at 6:40. Stay right here. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Schaefer and Sleeve on San Diego Sports 760. All right, DraftKings is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, California. The Cup is down to its final matches. 1 trophy, 1 champion. DraftKings has you covered for every single one. The DraftKings app is now live in California. So whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every match, every moment, all in one app. Right here in California, the world's biggest stage. It's in the palm of your hand. New DraftKings customers, sign up with the code SD760. Spend $5 to get $200 in total rewards over 21 days. That's code SD760 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Event trading offered by DraftKings. Predictions, a CFTC registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click-to-claim issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. Ends July 19th. Terms, dkng.co/predictions promo. Our final segment of the show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Padres taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's the final of a 4-game set for the Padres. Just a quick reminder as well, starting on Monday, San Diego Sports 760 has 9 chances to win $1,000 every weekday with the Bonus Bucks giveaway. That's every hour, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., starting Monday, July 13th. Listen for the keyword, then enter it at sportssd.com, starting Monday at 9 a.m. So this kind of becomes, an interesting finale for San Diego. I'll just play out a couple series here or a couple scenarios here. There was a stretch that we got to where we knew the Padres were going to be playing some of their toughest baseball. And we knew that it was the Dodgers for 7 games. It was Atlanta for 3, the Cubbies for 3, Arizona for 4, and the Toronto Blue Jays, the final 3 games before you get to the All-Star break. Here where the Padres are sitting right now, they're 7-9. If they could somehow find a way to win this game tonight against Arizona, and here's the pitching matchup, and this happens to me every time, and I think this is what you're referring to a little bit earlier, Brent, where just when you kind of start getting a little excited, some momentum, the Padres lay an egg. We've seen that. So I think this is, completely fair to say. But Griffin Canning, by the way, on the mound for the Padres, not a good record, not a good ERA. So we'll see what he ends up doing. I think, did he pitch? Brent, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head. Did he pitch Sunday? Was that one win against the Dodgers? I think it was Griffin Canning. Maybe JP Sears. I think
it was JP Sears because he had no hitter through like 5.
That's right. That was JP Sears. Okay, so with that in mind, listen, you take 3 or 4 from Arizona based on the predicament, the situation, the fact that you had lost your first game to the Arizona Diamondbacks, the fact that you'd be 8-19 through these first 17 games of this 20-game stretch. That ain't terrible. Now, it's so weird because you win your first 4 games in a row. Then one of those games, you obviously sweep Atlanta, you win one against the Dodgers, and then you just had just some random games in between. I won't stop. I won't forget you got the ass kicking against the Dodgers where you gave up 15 runs. You had, again, just kind of trying to think of these off the top of my head, that first game against the Cubs where you're up 2-0 and had plenty of chances to add to that 2-0 lead. You end up losing that game 3-2. Just sloppy baseball, bad baseball by the Padres. You had the 23-run game that you gave up against the Cubs. You had the 8-0 shutout against Arizona that it's coming off of a win against you. Like, hey, maybe a little bit momentum. They're all over the place, I think, is the point. And maybe on top of that, what I'm referring to is last night's game where they win 10-4 and they get 13 hits and they look phenomenal. They're all over the place. So it's so tough to predict anything about the San Diego Padres. But again, I'll say it. If you could take 3 or 4, and we're sitting here, tomorrow, and we're having this conversation going into the series against Toronto, there's still a path for them to go 10-10 over this 20-game stretch. That's still on the table. I think the good news from yesterday's game is there were so many different players that were involved. I know you're not always going to have a game where you have 13 hits, definitely for the Padres. You're definitely not going to be in a position where you have 10 runs, but I think there's some positivity there. Brent, I think based off of all of that, there is that just kind of how do I put this? They are such a roller coaster this year, and either it looks good or it's just completely in the dumps with your face down on the floor. It's one or the other.
It's okay. We can say that because Mike Schultz not here anymore. Remember, he hated roller coasters.
Yeah.
Because he didn't like the analogy. Somebody in the press used a roller coaster analogy for their season the one year, and he was not a fan of that analogy.
Sure. But that's if he didn't like that analogy, and those were 2 90-win seasons that he had managing the Padres, imagine this team. I mean, this team is the definition of a roller coaster. They start the season out 10 games over 500. Then they go for a free fall. I think that in that article we were reading in the Power Rings with ESPN, 14-26 over a stretch. That was the worst stretch in all of baseball over that 40-game stretch. And then they just follow up with 2 really good wins. I don't know what the hell I'm going to get tonight or we're going to get tonight at 640. There's no way of predicting that. let me read a couple of these here. A couple on YouTube here, a couple of these comments as we get ready to close out the show. It's a small market in a high tax state. Why would players come here when they can make 20% more playing in Florida or Texas? Why would owners keep the team here when they'll lose half their profit? Brother, the state of California has plenty of professional teams, and I don't think that's going anywhere. That's definitely not going anywhere. Neither are any of these teams. I know you could say, well, the A's left, and the idiot Dean Spanos who left. Where did he go? He left because he didn't have a stadium, went up to LA, stayed in the state of California, and still doesn't have a stadium. So greed, yes, is always part of the game as well. One other thing that I'm going to make mention here before we get out of here. Let's see what we have. One other thing I'll make mention, just these next couple of days, this World Cup schedule. I watched France today. They're dominating. That's the best country in the world in this World Cup, and I don't even know if it's close. They're the only team. Well, you could say they had a little bit of a scare against Paraguay, winning 1-0, but they beat Morocco earlier 2-0. Tomorrow, Spain and Belgium. Saturday, 2 games. You got Norway and England. You got Argentina and Switzerland, and that's it. We will have our Final Four from there, and obviously based on that, we'll get to these Final Four games. I still don't understand how there isn't a Final Four at the Azteca in Mexico. Still don't understand that. I will not understand it. Nobody will be able to convince me otherwise. There should be a Final Four at the Azteca in Mexico City, and that is that's a disgrace that they don't have one of these games. All right, that's all we got for today. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. Appreciate everybody here on YouTube. Shout out to Brett for making it happen. Darren and Annie being guests. We will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening.